Last Minute Winner, a sports podcast.
Yes, people, welcome back to another episode of Last Minute Winner. For those of you who listen regularly, you'll know that I am a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, and today we had Andrew Charles from Brits in the End Zone on the podcast to fix the Jacksonville Jaguars. We had a bit of a shit season last year. It was not just a terrible season, and we're going to be looking for a new quarterback. And a lot of stuff has actually happened since we recorded the podcast, but luckily we predicted it all, so it doesn't actually change our theories. Today we cut Malik Jackson, Jeremy Parnell, Sean Gibson and Carlos Hyde. So there's a lot of roster holes to fill, especially at quarterback. As far as quarterback goes, we did this podcast based on the theory that we're going to sign Nick Foles, which appears to be the most likely outcome at the minute. Although I think Adam Schefter did just say we're interested in Teddy Bridgewater, but that could just be part of negotiations. The front office is under pressure. I think they don't want to deal with a rookie quarterback. We do discuss in the podcast whether we think that's the right way to go. But without further ado, I will let you get to the podcast and you can hear our theories on free agency, the draft, etc. This week's Song of the Week. I made a bit of a controversial statement a few podcasts ago when Meek Mill's album dropped, and I said I wasn't really keen on it. But since then, I've listened to it a lot. And one tune I actually went to some MMA fights last week, and one of the guys came out to Championships by Meek Mill, and it's an absolute banger. And Jacksonville, we're going for championships this year. So this week's Tune of the Week, Meek Mill, Championships, off the Championships album. I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Yeah, all the youngins in my hood popping perks now.
Yeah, so we might as well get into it really. So, Andrew Charles from Brits in the End Zone.
Hi.
Actually, the first guest on the podcast ever. You were the first person I asked, and you were on episode 1, and now back on episode, I believe it's 23.
Nice.
So,
well, you had your priorities right, getting me in first. So
yeah, exactly. You're in the Hall of Fame of Last Minute Winner now. So
nice.
That's something for the CV. So the main aim of today is we're going to try and fix the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're both massive fans and both enjoyed a rough season, really, in general.
Yeah, to say the least.
So, obviously, the Jags are known for their good defense. The year before, it was amazing. Last year, it wasn't too bad either. But the main thing we're going to have to try and do is sort out the quarterback position. So, let's start there, really. The rumours are that we're going to get Nick Foles. And I think the moves we're making kind of lines up with that. It looks like it's probably going to be around a 3-year deal, possibly between up to $20 million a year. What do you think of the Nick Foles, is the potential of a Nick Foles deal, and what do you think if you were GM? What would you do with the quarterback position?
I can understand the move. I personally think it would be better to try and draft Dwayne Haskins if possible, but obviously that's out of their control at this stage. So I can understand them, wanting to have the bird at the hand in the bush, or whatever it is, the bird in the hand, where they know they can get an average to good quarterback locked up with, he's safe. He hasn't got that great upside, but he's a big improvement on Bortles. Yeah. So they want to get that locked up. The big thing I think though is the regime, the GM and head coach and Tom Coughlin have been told that they need to improve this year, and that's or they'll lose their jobs. So that's essentially was what they got told at the end of last season.
Yeah.
And so if you've got that over your head, you want to do what's best for this season, and
you're going to go with a proven commodity in Nick Foles.
Exactly. So whilst I think for the franchise as a whole, it would be better to go for a quarterback from the draft. Specifically Haskins, in my opinion. But that would be better for the franchise over the next potentially 10 years, I think as far as 2019 is concerned, Nick Foles will actually give you the best option. However, it's a catch-22. Can you look at it just for 1 year? Because if you do it and then don't win the Super Bowl, then it wasn't worth it. No. But we'll see how it goes. I think the Jags are kind of been not lulled into it. It kind of seems too good an opportunity to sign Foles because the market's not there. The Broncos traded for Flacco.
Yeah,
they were one of the other teams mooted to be interested. The Giants can't really afford him with paying Manning, and they've even had to cut Landon Collins.
Dodgy decision, I think that. I don't understand it.
I think so. And it is a lot of money for the safety position, but I agree.
It's only just above 11 mil though. Which obviously is a lot of money for safety, but in terms of the entire NFL, I don't know.
No, I agree.
I think the Giants. I think Giants might be the only team with a worse front office than us.
Yes, exactly. It's not a benchmark you want to necessarily hold your hand. But also the other team is the Redskins, but they've got Alex Smith that they can't really afford to necessarily pay 2 quarterbacks. I know we're still paying Blake Bortles, but a lot of that can be offset when we cut him, and if he gets signed on another team, that even helps us even further. And then after that, it's the Dolphins, who I think are probably looking to tank. I think apparently they really like the quarterback crop next year, and they're in a bit of a rebuild. So I think really we're the only team interested, and so from at first when it looked like we'd have to give him not necessarily Kirk Cousins money, but close to, that would have been a really bad option. But now it's looking like it's less than 20 million a year, which is
pretty affordable, but in terms of quarterback salaries nowadays,
absolutely. So it kind of feels like a relatively sensible option. Although deep down, I really would want Dwayne Haskins, which becomes unlikely, but I'm still holding out faint hope that we do make a play for him, because that's the guy I've been looking at all off season and for the last 3 or 4 months. And I think as a backup, as I'm adjusting, I'm starting to get used to the idea that maybe Nick Foles could be okay if we have good off-season moves aside from Nick Foles.
I think it's definitely difficult, because you're right in what you're saying, that the GM has been told he has a year to prove it. So in order to keep his job, he might actually put the future of the franchise in jeopardy by taking up someone like Nick Foles on a fairly big deal. I'd be happy with Nick Foles. I think I prefer Kyler Murray to Dwayne Haskins. I would take either, and I do think it's possible. It's not ridiculous that I reckon we could easily get up to 3 with the Jets. The Giants, if they're going to take a quarterback, aren't probably going to move up. They don't have that much draft capital. They've got so many needs. So I think it's not hard this year, I believe, to go up to number 3 with the Jets and get the quarterback you want, whether that is Haskins or Murray might be going at 1. We never know. But
it looks like Murray's going at 1. Yeah, but I agree with you. It seems like we really realistically are going to be the only team that would trade, because, like you said, the Giants have so many needs and have Manning for now. They don't need to trade up for him. And then you look at the teams we just mentioned that are quarterback needy for the Foles, like the market, the Dolphins and the Redskins, and even potentially the Bengals. They're kind of in the 11 to 15 range, and it's a lot harder to move from the middle of the first round up to the top 4 picks than it is to move just from 7. Because if we came in offering a decent a couple of extra picks to move up from 7 to say 4 or 5 or 3, whatever,
you're still going to get a high quality player when you move down to 7.
Exactly. They're still going to be able to get a top defensive lineman or whatever, a top blue chip player in the draft at 7, as opposed to kind of settling for I think once you get past pick 8 in this draft, then you've got about 20 players that are much of a muchness.
Yeah.
So you're really kind of settling at that point rather than keeping your chances of landing a really top player. But
Yeah.
so I think you're right.
So that's also kind of part of the issue. So we're gonna carry on with this fixing the Jaguars plan as if Blake Bortles is gonna get signed, because I think that is the most likely thing at this point in time. So that question becomes then
Nick Foles.
Yeah, sorry, Nick Foles. Yeah. Who did I say?
Please don't say you said Blake Bortles, and I knew.
Oh no.
Oh, please stop that.
No, Blake. We can't do another year. It's been too much.
Yeah, he's a lovely man.
Yeah,
God.
definitely. No, I saw a few people on Twitter saying just keep Blake and sign a rookie, but I don't think even if we sign Kyler Murray or Haskins that Blake can be on this roster because
I think
the disrespect. His time is up. It's completely gone.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick Foles. We're going to carry on as if Nick Foles has signed. And that sort of begs the question: what do you do with 7? So I'm just going to read out some of the notes I've got about our draft needs and our current cap situation, etc. So obvious needs are QB, as we've already discussed. The next obvious need is right guard. AJ Cann is a free agent this year and hasn't performed that well. The whole right side of the line, really, with Jeremy Parnell, who's probably going to be a cap casualty as well. Tight end's another big spot. And now
at the moment we have no tight ends.
Literally none
definitely.
at all. And then another position. The news actually just came through from Rapsheet on Twitter. That it looks like the Jaguars are trying to offload to Sean Gibson.
Apparently a few teams have come asking for him. I always thought he was going to be a cap casualty as well because we could have cut him with little to no dead cap. And
I think it says 7 or 8 million. I think.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that teams have come to us in what is a free agency market filled with really top
Honey
safety
Badger,
talent.
Landon Collins.
Exactly. You've got Amos from the Bears. You've got Earl Thomas, obviously from the Seahawks. You've got Joyner from the Rams.
Eric Weddle.
Weddle from the Ravens. I mean, so many top echelon safeties that are hitting the market that I was surprised apparently with the way he worded it that teams have approached us for him. So I think if we can get a pick for him and move away from 8 million with an extra draft pick, we should actually bite their hand off because one of those players that are hitting the market, we could be able to probably sign for maybe even a bit less, and so essentially get a free draft pick and save some money whilst not necessarily losing any talent in the position because all those players I just listed are all at a similar level, if not better than Gibson.
Definitely, and I think that obviously Barry Church was cut towards the end of the season, so it will be a totally new safety duo if that does happen. But Ronnie Harrison looked good He
looks very good
in Spits when he came on and starting towards the end of the season. And also they just signed Gerard Wilson who I haven't actually seen that much of. Mainly plays special teams.
He's more mainly special teams. But he filled in quite nicely.
And I think they like the prospects of him maybe starting at some point during the year as well, or maybe just being the third safety. They feel quite comfortable with him. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. We are in a bit of a bad cap situation. We're currently about 300k under the cap, which obviously isn't a lot of money. A lot of that's down to Marcel Darius took a bit of a pay cut or a restructure. We had some more cuts. So there's a few cuts that I've got proposed here. If you disagree with any of them, let me know. Blake Bortles, I'm sure you're happy with that one.
Yeah, he's got to go.
Got to go. Malik Jackson. He's going to be earning 11 million next year, or maybe more. But
actually, 11 million he'd be earning 13. 13, but we can cut him and save 11 with only 2 dead cap.
Which is a no-brainer, really.
Exactly, and he is a very good player. He's a top 5 or top 10 defensive tackle. But for that amount of money, I don't think we can warrant keeping him, especially when we already have Darius and we drafted the first round defensive tackle in Taven Bryan last year.
And I would like to see Taven Bryan get some more snaps at free technique because I thought last year he looked a bit bamboozled on the edge because they were asking him to sort of play big edge and sort of spell Calais Campbell. So it would be nice to see him play in his natural position of free tech, and hopefully
they moved him there at the end of last season, and Malik Jackson kind of was more of a bench role. And he looked a lot more, Brian looked a lot better than he had at playing big end. But, I think you're right. I think that will happen.
Definitely. So that's good. That's the one thing about the good thing about the draft last year is that we didn't sort of get stuff that we needed right at that moment, but we did get stuff that now has set us up in a nice situation cap-wise that we can cut people like Malik Jackson, and we've got ready-made replacements. Same with Barry Church as well.
So yeah, I think the Ronnie Harrison one is good. Although Taven Bryan was an interesting one because this year's draft is and it wasn't a surprise that it was going to be one of the best for defensive tackle, defensive lineman in a long time. So the fact they picked one in the first round last year, could they have maybe waited and said we'll pick one in this draft and gone for something else. But having done that at the time, you can understand the logic. Yeah,
definitely. It definitely wasn't a slam dunk pick. That's for sure.
No.
Right, so another one is Jeremy Parnell. I think he's 33 years old. He's been actually a good right tackle for us.
He's been serviceable.
Serviceable, definitely for the. I think he might have even been undrafted. I think originally from Dallas, but there's a $6 million saving on him this year, and no dead cap, I believe. So that kind of seems like a no-brainer as well. Will Richardson is someone that we drafted last year in the 4th round.
Nicely.
Again, in the same mould as Bryan and Jackson, who I think they're lining up to play right tackle this year. We didn't get to see him play because he was on IR most of the year, but his tape looks promising. And
I think there's every chance that he'll be our starting right tackle for the year, unless they get enamoured by a tackle like Jawan Taylor at 7, who is a right tackle. Unless they really like him, then I can see Will Richardson being our right tackle for this year at least.
Yeah, definitely. And the right guard obviously is an even bigger hole because there is just no one there pretty much. So they're going to have to try and target that. And then Carlos Hyde, who we signed, didn't really actually do much at all, and wasn't really worth the 5th round pick we gave up for him in the end. So another great move.
That's safe to say.
Great move by the front office. But cut him, save another 4.
Us last year, didn't they? We gave them a 7th and a 5th for Hyde and Kessler. So they're laughing.
I know. Yeah. When you start in, John Dorsey's obviously a different kettle of fish, but just getting done by the Browns is not good because historically speaking, because they usually get done more than often. So we save $4.7 million on him. So after those cuts, it leaves us somewhere between after that, depends on how they designate Bortles money, but between $24 to $30 million in free cap, which is probably enough for Nick Foles and then possibly a tight end. I've put Jesse James from the Steelers down as someone.
They're meant to be interested in him.
Yeah, they are meant to be interested.
That looks like, I think that would be a good fit.
And like I said, we have no tight ends on the roster at all.
Exactly. I think you need, and also because like I think you mentioned before we came on it, that the tight ends have a tendency to take a bit of a time to adjust to the league. So you don't necessarily want to rely wholly on rookies. You want someone who's been around to be mentor any rookies and also be used to the NFL system.
Yeah, definitely. Another person who is a free agent is Jared Cook, who actually had a beastly year last year and was the number 1 target of Derek Carr, mainly because there was absolutely nobody around him after they just got rid of everyone.
I was about to say I think that's a leading statistic.
Yeah, definitely. But is there someone who is an option in a very sort of bad tight end free agency class? Another person is James O'Shaughnessy, who is a free agent from us and who's actually come in and I think done okay. He's definitely, I think, a reliable backup at least.
Yeah, I think they'd sign him. Yeah, they can get him on a cheap deal.
Yeah,
and
he's not going to cost a lot of money.
He knows the system. He knows the place. I think just to beef up the numbers slightly, I think it makes sense to keep him around. I think Jesse James is more of a player they'd be interested in than Jared Cook. Jared Cook's 100%. More of a receiver.
You have to be able to block to be a Jacksonville tight end.
Exactly. They're all about the running game, and that's a big requirement that they have. You have to be able to block, which is why when getting onto the draft, is why I think Hockenson is more of a likelihood if we did go tight end than Noah Fant, because Hockenson can block a lot better than Fant, even though Fant's probably a bit more of a.
That boy can block like an offensive lineman. I've watched some of his tape, and he just takes people out completely. And the play would have been blown dead, and he just carries on running people back.
He does not care.
No, I love Hockenson. He is literally my favourite player in the draft. I think because he is literally a perfect Jag. the fact that he blocks, dynamic receiver, like he would suit the team so much. The reason I'm putting so much emphasis on the tight end position is because obviously we've got John DeFilippo now, who is our new offensive coordinator, who has been throughout his career has used tight ends a lot. Whether I know he wasn't the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, but Zach Ertz was obviously key there. And when he was Trey Burton as a H-back, who's very similar to Irv Smith in this draft. They remind me of each other. And also he turned Gary Barnage when he was at the Browns into like a 1,000-yard receiver.
I had Gary Barnage in fantasy, so that's
a great pickup.
I thought in the tight end landscape, I thought, he had one good game, I'll pick him up, and then he had an absolute beast of a season.
Yeah.
So Gary Barnage holds a special place in my heart.
So we need to get some tight ends. Like they're becoming the biggest mismatch weapon in the whole league, and we're just behind because our front office is so old school. Tom Coughlin at the New York Giants, at the Jags, has never drafted a tight end higher than the 5th round. Dave Caldwell has never drafted one higher than the 7th, which makes me find it hard to believe they're going to pick one in the 1st, but we will see. Should we get to the draft then? We've got some other free agents, but there's no one I think really we're going to sign. Maybe some backup offensive linemen. Maybe Eric Flowers gets a chance because he's got a bit more talent.
I think they'll re-sign him. I think they can get him cheap. But let's move on to the draft.
Cool, so let's get on to the exciting bit. So the Jags have round 1, pick 7. We have got another pick in round 2 at 7, another one in round 3. And then the 3rd rounder that we got for Dante Fowler Jr. From the LA Rams. And then picks in 4, no pick in 5, I believe, then a pick in 6 and 7. So a decent place to be in with 2 third-round picks when you've got a few needs. Round 1, pick 7, if you're not picking a QB, what do you think is the best way to go?
Yeah, again, that's the big. If we're not going Haskins, then I think it'll be either be Hockenson, who we mentioned before at tight end, or I think it will be an offensive lineman like Jawan Taylor.
Yeah,
I think that'll be, and I say like Jawan Taylor. I think kind of specifically Jawan Taylor because he can play right tackle. I don't think they necessarily would sign a Jonah Williams or a Greg Little who are out and out left tackles because we've already got Cam Robinson who's never played any other position other than left tackle. So and it's easy to say, just draft a left tackle and then make them fight it out, and whoever loses goes to right tackle. It's a lot easier said than done
when you've been doing it for 15 years or
exactly. Wow. Since you're at 12 or 13. So I think for me, if it's not a quarterback, which again painful to say, then I would say and excluding any trade back scenarios, which I think it'll be tough to trade back in this landscape.
Completely agree with that.
Yeah, I think, and a caveat, unless there's a huge surprise and one of the top defensive linemen falls, which I don't like. Nick Foles isn't probably not going to fall. Quinnen Williams isn't going to fall. Josh Allen isn't going to fall. If one of them did, I could see them going that route, but I don't think that would happen. So I think logically, of the players that are likely going to be there, then I think for me it'd be either Jawan Taylor or Hockenson.
Yeah, I completely agree, to be honest. Funnily enough, the draftnetwork.com, I don't know if you've read any of their stuff. Joe Marino, he just released their Jacksonville Jaguars 7-round mock draft, and they've just got TJ Hockenson going to us at pick 7 as well. Like I said earlier, I think it'd be hard for them to pick a tight end at number 7 just because they're so old school. Jawan Taylor is definitely an option at right tackle. Apart from that, it's a bit of it would be nice to trade back because it is a bit of a dodgy position because I feel like whatever player you go for, you kind of are reaching a little bit. Like they're all players that maybe should be picked around 10 to 12 to 13.
Especially on offense because I think at that pick
it's a defensive draft.
Exactly. So potentially there would be an opportunity to trade back if there's a team that really has their arm on the defensive players left. Yeah. But you're right. The top, apart from the quarterbacks, the top 10 players the top 10 non-quarterbacks could easily be defensive linemen. And so the fact that that's really not a need for us, and I'd be surprised if we went that way unless one of the top players fell. Yeah, you're right. I think it is a bit of a reach, but if there's no trade market, then I think you kind of have to. And at the end of the day, if you end up coming away with a player that is going to be influential, whether you pick him at 7 or 11, it doesn't make a difference at the end of the day.
It's just about getting good players in your team.
Exactly.
Right. So TJ Hawkinson, should we agree to go with TJ for this example?
Go on then. I think let's assume that they're happy with Will Richardson, and they'll go Hawkinson.
Yeah, and I think that the O-line depth is pretty good. I did have just take the best defensive player on the board in my notes for round 1, pick 7. So we'll move on to round 2.
The only caveat is they'll also be aware that this is probably the best tight end draft class ever, and that if they didn't go tight end in the first, there's plenty of opportunity to pick a tight end at any point in this draft, and you can find a tight end that will help you out. But who knows? They can pick a second tight end later in the draft as well. So let's go Hawkinson.
Cool. Right. So round 2, I've got. I think this is a good point, really. Chris Lindstrom is another player who I've watched tape of, and he could be here depending on how the draft goes, or he could not be. He might get. There's a lot of O-line needy teams around the bottom half with the Houston Texans, Minnesota Vikings, etc. But Chris Lindstrom is another player who I've watched on film, and I just love because he's definitely, again, he's a Jaguar. Like, he's got attitude, he's physical, and I just feel like he would slot so good in. And I think he plays right guard at Boston College as well, so it's a perfect fit. I
agree. I think there are 3 players that when I've been doing mock drafts, which I've been in my spare time having the odd go at. Yeah. The three players that I've been picking between, depending on which ones there is number 1 is Chris Lindstrom at right guard. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is Dalton Reisner, also at right guard. Mm-hmm. And the other one is Cody Ford, who is a tackle, but they reckon in the NFL might project more as a right guard. So I completely agree that seems to be a sweet spot for a right guard. There's some really top level, arguably first round talent guards that could fall to the beginning of the second round. I think with that, I think I'd be delighted with any one of those 3.
Yeah, coming out of the first 2 rounds with TJ Hawkinson and Chris Lindstrom would be an ideal scenario because I think they'd both just slot in straight away.
Yeah, agreed.
And would help the run game massively because obviously Fournette had a bit of a tough year with injuries and everything. And like we were saying earlier, TJ Hawkinson is one of the best blockers as well, so he also adds to the run game.
100%.
So that'd be a perfect first two rounds of the draft, and we have 2 3-round picks. So that's worked out pretty nicely. We hope it goes the same on the draft night. So round 3, what are you thinking? Because it depends, obviously, if we do sign a safety, as I would probably expect we do in free agency. I think this is probably a good time to perhaps pick up a defensive player with one of these 2 picks, and perhaps a backup edge defender, because the depth chart at the minute is really just sort of Yannick and Calais. Calais obviously getting on a bit, and with a big injury there, I think we could come into some trouble, and obviously it would be the kind of player that would replace Dante Fowler Jr., who left for the Rams.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, there's a couple of there's a player that I'd hope might be there, but he could even go as high as late first, early second. But is Jalen Ferguson? Mm-hmm. He's an edge player that looks really good when I've looked at any film of his. But yeah, you're right. I think I wouldn't be disappointed if at that stage they took a player, maybe depending on what quality is there at the beginning of the third. I'd probably be more tempted to say let's go with use that late third round on an edge player unless there's an obvious guy.
I agree.
I think in the third, for me, I think another, I mentioned that this is a really tight end draft class. I think another position with a lot of talent is at wide receiver. Yeah. And I think this seems to be a very good range for to get a good wide receiver to add to our receiving corps. Obviously, we've got Marquise Lee, who missed the whole of last year and is on a decent sized contract, and how he'll come back is yet to be seen. We've got Keelan Cole, who looked great in his rookie year, but then really struggled last year. Yeah. Can we rely on him? It's yet to be seen. D.D. Westbrook looks great, but we've lost Moncrief, and so I think maybe like a big-bodied wide receiver. That like
that's sort of what we need. We've got quite a few fast guys, sort of D.D. Westbrook in the slot and DJ Chark as a deep threat, but we are missing that sort of big body contested catch receiver. Is there anyone you have your eye on in particular around that range?
A couple of guys maybe that hopefully might be around the early third. I think around early third would be Hakeem Butler. I don't know if he'll last that long. I think he looks great.
He's huge. He's 6'6" and ran a 4.49 in the combine.
Yeah,
which is
I think that would help him. I think that might mean he's not there anymore. I think another guy who won't be there, who also looks great, is N'Keal Harry. But another guy I think maybe in the third was DeMarcus Lodge. He was also at Ole Miss with. I can't believe that they had DeMarcus Lodge. They had DK Metcalf and they had AJ Brown.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
Unbelievable. They're going to struggle next year.
Yeah, I know. And they've lost their quarterback and their tight end Dawson Knox, who never got through to, but apparently is absolutely ripping up the combine and looks pretty good. They just never through to him. So they're going to struggle big time.
When you got that many targets, But so a couple of guys there who I think are more of the receiver that we. There's that JJ
Arcega-Whiteside,
Yeah, I think I like the look of him as well. But like I said, the fact we can can pull out a few of these names that shows how many wide receiver options there would be at this stage of the draft that I think could come in and certainly contribute to the team. And I think if we're assuming Foles is the guy, you need to give them weapons because whilst it was a lot of the offensive line and Bortles last year and Kessler. The weapons did not do anything to help. There were a lot of drops. I think Hawkinson in this scenario would obviously help being a receiving tight end, and because we mentioned DeFilippo's propensity to coordinate throwing to the tight end, but Foles last year was even when DeFilippo wasn't there. Foles last year averaged I think 10 targets to the tight end position per game. I mean,
a lot.
That's bonkers. Yeah, so you can see he's very much that's something he likes to do. Some certain quarterbacks really like throwing to tight ends, like Jameis Winston does. So I think we would definitely need to give him that option. But another option at wide receiver certainly couldn't hurt.
No, and it would be replacing Moncrief. I think the only person who really stood out last year was D.D. Westbrook. And I think a lot of it has been down to bad quarterback play. So hopefully if the quarterback play gets better, then hopefully, people like DJ Chark will start to sort of come along. But I definitely think we need to add someone. And a big-bodied person I think would be best. I'll put down J.J. Arcega-Whiteside as the top of the third round. Because I think that is realistic. I'm not sure if he ran the other day, but... there's going to be one person who drops because there's just so many good options between Kevin Harmon, Marquise Brown, Deebo Samuel, Paris Campbell, and Ali Isabella ran 4.31. Riley Ridley's still there. So there's going to be someone that drops. So we'll put JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah, the fact you just listed so many, you're completely right. One or two of them will drop because there are only a certain number of teams that are going to draft wide receiver in the first 2 rounds.
Exactly, because a lot of people do like to draft wide receivers later on as well because there is usually more of them than there are offensive tackles, for example. Cool. So I'll put DeAndre Walker down for the second third round pick because he's just someone out of Georgia who I haven't actually seen that much of, but he always seems to be in that late third round range. So I'll just put him down as unless you've got anyone else you can think of.
I mean, a player that I kind of always seems to be hanging around there, very tempting, is a running back like Devin Singletary. I think because obviously we mentioned Fournette, but Fournette is the only running back we have on our roster. So I think we certainly need to sign another running back, whether it's in free agency like Latavius Murray or probably more likely through the draft to.
That was going to be my next point of the top of the fourth because I think there is going to be a lot of options. Not other running backs ran that well in the combine, so I think there are going to be quite a few options on. Even in a good running back draft, there are more options available in the later rounds. We've seen people like Kareem Hunt, etc., get picked up.
True. I think the fact that they were in such great running back drafts meant that they're more were going to fall. I think the fact there aren't really many running backs in this draft mean that teams, any team that does, exactly, because if a team needs a running back, they need a running back, and they're going to kind of be pushed to reach for that next guy. So I don't necessarily, I hope that a running back falls to the fourth round that gives good value, but I'll concede on this draft, but I think you might see some of the running backs go because teams need a running back and they value a guy at that point that they don't want to miss out on because it really starts to dry up a bit later on in the draft.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those running backs. It's actually, there's quite a bit of this. It's not a shallow draft, but there's just not the Saquon, the Todd Gurley, the sort of the big standout performer. There's a few people I like. Travion Williams out of Texas A&M. I think he's pretty good. It depends on what do you think we should go for. If we do sign someone like Latavius Murray, that sort of opens us up more to get a third down speed pass catching back to sort of replace TJ Yeldon. Or do you think we should go with someone who's more like Fournette and is possibly more of a backup for when he actually needs to have a bit of a rest because his body hasn't held up that well?
I think you need someone. I think like an example would be a Tariq Cohen to your Jordan Howard. Mm-hmm. I think someone who can spell at times on first and second down, but would obviously give you a lot more option on third down. And Fournette did show a fair bit of improvement at catching, but at the end of the day, that's not what he's there to do. I think getting someone in with a bit of twitch,
run people over, Leonard. That's what we want you to do.
Exactly. So getting someone with a bit of twitch who can make plays happen and give you a bit of that a bit of speed at the position, a bit different. I think would be probably preferable. I think you can find I guess a plodder in free agency. Whether I think Latavius Murray does a good job, but there are so many of those running backs that we have got a futures contract with Thomas Rawls, who I think would fill that role perfectly. He had that one very good year in Seattle, and I think he could certainly be that cover for Fournette and to spell him. But I think we need that change of pace guy to come in and offer something different.
Cool, yeah. So, do you have anyone in particular? Devin Singletary was someone that everyone had really high hopes for. Had a bit of a bad combine, really, which kind of has sort of deaded the hype on him a little bit. Justice Hill out of Oklahoma State had a good combine. Was very fast. Looks fast on tape as well. So, if you are looking for speed, Justice Hill could be someone that if you do get it at the end of the third round, you might still be there.
I think you could certainly wait. I think he could last to the fourth. I think any one of those guys, I think in the beginning of the fourth could you don't have too long to wait between your end of the third and the beginning of the fourth. So I think
Darrell Henderson out of Memphis is interesting as well.
Yeah, true. So there's quite a few options that they could certainly go for. But then obviously with that fourth round pick, you want to make sure you're happy with it because you're then not picking for 2 rounds. So you might want to go for a running back, or if there's a player there, you like at any position that you just don't think's gonna last. Maybe you reach for a player at that point because you kind of have to.
Yeah, and when we get to the 6th and 7th round, you've just got there's no point us saying we need this, we need that, because you've just got to pick the best player available because majority of these players aren't going to work out. So if you see someone and he is in the biggest position of depth, like I don't know, cornerback or whatever, you just got to take him because at this point it's a total crapshoot. You just got to try and get the best players you can.
Absolutely, because you're right. At this point in the round 6 and 7. They're unlikely to make the team. So you might as well pick a player you think that can come in and show some promise and contribute to the team, whether it's as a backup, as special teams, or on your more likely on the practice squad. But get someone with talent in. But I think maybe at that point, the talent really lies in this draft. Like I said, at tight end, so I could see them maybe going for another one just to flesh out that tight end room.
Yeah, definitely. So we won't go too in depth with the 6th and 7th round pick because who the fuck knows who's going to be there and what's going to happen. So we won't geek out too hard. But there is one position I wanted to discuss, which is strong side linebacker. Leon Jacobs we got in the 7th round last year. It was a pretty good pickup. He didn't actually have, for a 7th rounder, wasn't too bad. But it is something that we could probably do. We're getting a bit more competition in that linebacker room. Especially a big guy who can help out against the run a little bit. Yeah,
but I guess he's a bit of a beast. But we don't use that package very often. So I think it's not worth necessarily having an extra guy compete for a position that doesn't play more than really 30% of the snaps anyway. I think he did a solid job, and he's on such a cheap contract that I think he'll certainly suffice, unless obviously someone screams value in the 6th or 7th. I think his position should be relatively safe.
You're turning into a GM already. You're trying to pinch the pennies. Look at you.
I know. Tell me about it. I love this sort of stuff.
I know. Yeah, it's good. I always think that they should actually bring out an NFL game. I know there are a couple on but a legitimate Football Manager style. You're the GM game.
1,000,000%. That would be amazing.
That's a massive hole in the market. There is one I know on Steam that people. I haven't actually played it, but
yeah, I played a demo of one year and I loved it. I was obsessed, but then it ran. And I got to the draft and I did the draft and then the game finished. I was like, oh,
that's fucked up, man. Come on. So there is definitely a hole in the market for that. If they could get something going, Football Manager, get on it. Right, so let's sort of recap what we've done here. If we're looking at the starting 11 on each side of the ball, not much really changed on defense. We just got ourselves a backup edge player, and we're looking to signing a safety to replace Tayshaun.
Precisely, I think Harrison comes in, and I think Gibson goes and gets replaced with someone like potentially Eric Weddle could come in and with his experience be a good bit of a mentor to some of the younger players on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah,
I think that'd be a good sort of locker room move as well, because the locker room has been a bit feisty. Especially Gibson's been part of that as well. Would be a good locker room move. On offense, a lot's fucking changed. We've got Nick Foles at quarterback. Fournette's still there. The left side of the line is pretty much still intact with Cam Robinson, Norwell, and then Linda in the centre. We'd hopefully have Chris Lindstrom or Dalton Reisner at right guard, and then Will Richardson starting at right tackle. So it looks pretty good. The Jags line last year was mainly injuries rather than talent that sort of done us in.
And I think if that's the offensive line next year and they can stay healthy, I think that's certainly a top half of top 15 and line, potentially even top 10.
Yeah. And then tight end position has been totally revamped. We've got Jesse James, we've got TJ Hawkinson, we've got James O'Shaughnessy. We've got a good tight end room all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
And then wide receiver, hopefully we do get someone like JJ Arcega-Whiteside. DD Westbrook in the slot, I think we're all happy with that. And then just someone else really to sort of step up between Shark, Lee, and Keelan Cole, that's pretty good depth as well. I think we've done a pretty good job. Dave Caldwell probably. I reckon we could do as good as Dave Caldwell.
Yeah, exactly. Tag him in this, and then hopefully give him some ideas.
Come on, mate, sort it out. Don't fuck it up this year.
Exactly.
But yeah, cool. Right, Charlesy, thanks for coming on, mate. That was that was pretty in depth, but I think we've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, hopefully, and let's see how close we are. We're only a month or so away, a month and a half away until we find out how close we were, or how wrong we were, more likely.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how close we are.
Exactly, a lot's going to happen between now and then, but I'm looking forward to every minute of it.
Yeah, cool. Right, mate, we'll discuss some of the draft stuff on Twitter. For everyone listening, you could give me a follow on @lastmin_win. Are you guys doing the Brits in the End Zone podcast at the moment, or are you?
We've had a bit of a break. One of the guys is having a baby,
live stuff.
Exactly, but we're certainly going to make an effort to kind of do the occasional one. So
nice one,
give us a follow at Brits and at Brits in the End Zone, or at Brits_End Zone. And I'm at Charles ASC2, so feel free to give me a follow.